your guaranteed amazing deals on appliances, TVs, sofas, furniture, bedding, mattresses and everything else to complete your home. N17superstores.ie.
Saturday's All-Ireland Minor Camogie semi-final between Galway and Tipperary has been fixed for Castletown Gagan in County Westmeath. Throw-in is at 2 o'clock. Of course, it's a busy day, Saturday, of GAA with the Ladies National Football League final on at 5 o'clock in the Gaelic grounds in Limerick as Galway take on Cork. And the Galway Senior Camogie team, they're out on Sunday in their National League final at 2:15 in Nolan Park when they take on Waterford. The Connacht Minor Ladies Football Championship gets underway this evening in Glenamaddy at 7 o'clock as Galway meet Mayo. And there's also a full round of games in the local under-20 hurling leagues. All of those matches start at 6:30. And it's a 6:30 start in Tuam Stadium for the Connacht Under-20 Football Championship. We'll have live online coverage of Galway and Sligo from Tuam Stadium. In soccer, the Champions League quarter-finals continue tonight. It's Liverpool away to Paris Saint-Germain and Barcelona at home to Atletico Madrid. 17 Galway swimmers are competing today at the Irish Open Championships in Bangor Leisure Centre. Included among them are European and world champion John Short. In show jumping, Gort native Jessica Burke will compete in the Longines FEI World Cup show jumping finals in Fort Worth, Texas. It all starts tomorrow and runs until Sunday. And we've horse racing in Goran Park starting at 1:30.
Hi, it's Ronan here from the Live Wire. When John Morley is wrapping up at 12, boil the kettle, because you and I have a pure gold hour ahead. Every song is gold stamped. Talk to you from 12.
The weather with Kia Renmore. Bright skies ahead with 0% finance on all Kia Sportage models, diesel, hybrid and plug-in hybrid. Kia Renmore, the name for Kia in Galway.
Mostly dry with a mix of cloud and sunny spells at first today. Cloud will build from the west in the afternoon with rain and drizzle moving into western coastal counties this evening. Highest temperatures of 11 to 14 degrees. And mostly cloudy with outbreaks of rain and drizzle spreading eastwards early on tonight. Clear spells and scattered showers will follow from the west towards dawn. Lowest temperatures 3 to 6 degrees. Time now for your job spot.
The Job Spot on Galway Bay FM.
To advertise a job listing on Galway Bay FM, please contact reception on 091 777 0077 or email info@galwaybayfm.ie. Job spot listings can be heard each day at 11:15 and 3:45 or see all listings on galwaybayfm.ie. The Galway Bay FM Job Spot, building careers one step at a time.
If you need any phone numbers or email addresses, please call our reception on 091 770077. Search #Galway Jobs on social media or go to galwaybayfm.ie/jobspot.
You're listening to Galway Bay FM and this is Galway Talks with John Morley. Some of the text and WhatsApps coming in to 086 3833 553. Good morning, John. We were severely delayed in the M18 southbound yesterday by 3 tugs that drove their tractors at 3 kilometres an hour, blocking everyone. That comes in from Tony to us this morning. And another listener says, John, if the government aren't going to do anything about the price of fuel, every farmer and citizen in the country should down tools and head out and block every street in the country. I would support them wholeheartedly. Also, what about all the TDs who give up their state cars and start paying for their own fuel? We, the taxpayer, have enough to do in funding our own without funding theirs as well. There should not have free cars and fuel, in my opinion. Let's move on, though, this morning, because I'm joined by Dave McCarthy for financial advice. And Dave, we do have to start with that situation in terms of the fuel crisis. And I suppose first, the big revelation overnight in terms of that 2-week ceasefire already having a knock-on effect in the market, isn't it?
It is. Actually, this morning, the stock markets, which hate uncertainty, are up about 4% in Europe, which is a really significant move. And there was big gains overnight in Asia. And in fact, actually, people might be surprised to hear this, but if you go back and take the last 12 months, most stock markets worldwide are up quite a bit, even before today. So stock markets have been, I suppose, cautious about factoring in really bad news long term. It's kind of wait and see, and realistically, they're hoping now that maybe it will factor in good news as something will happen longer term. The other one, which I suppose for a lot of people and is very, I suppose, topical, is the price of oil has dropped about 15% this morning. And hopefully that will continue to drop if a longer term agreement is reached. But you know what? When you see these kind of insanity we've seen over the last number of weeks with this conflict, any news is good news, and hopefully it'll lead to something longer term and we can all get back to some level of normality.
So hopefully over the next 2 weeks we see that drop in diesel, petrol, home heating oil. But I suppose the question is, what happens then? Will it go back up again?
Well, no, look, this the $1 million question none of us know. I mean, you have to stop and look for a second. The price of oil has risen dramatically, as we all know, for reasons we all know, in a very short space of time. What's going to, I suppose, influence it dropping again? Well, obviously, it's going to be a resolution to this conflict and oil being freed up coming through the Strait of Hormuz. But the length of time it might take to go back down again for practical factors, as opposed to anybody thinking this is gouging, I think is going to take some time. And whether or not it goes back to anywhere near the levels it was before, it probably won't, because these things take time to resolve, and supply needs to be resolved. But, we should see a reasonable drop in the price of oil if the conflict is somewhat resolved over the next month or so. And that should hopefully help matters.
In terms of what government have and can do, I know it wouldn't be like you've been quite supportive and you've given a lot of praise to the moves they took there around 10, 11 days ago. There are calls from the people protesting in Galway yesterday and still at the fuel depot here in the Galway docks today for more measures to be done. But should they do that considering what's happened with Iran?
You see, this is a fluid situation, and that's the way the government are looking at it. Look, I'm not here to be apologetic for government policy or anything like that, but I'm just looking at it from an objective point of view. This whole thing has happened so fast, it's overtaken every government worldwide. And hopefully we'll see, maybe a resolution to this where prices will drop, fairly quickly. To the extent of which they will drop, we don't know. When you make changes as a government to, I suppose, issues in relation to taxation and subsidies, that they have a tendency to be something you're bringing in for a reasonably lengthy period of time. Well, then if you match that up and think, well, am I bringing something in for a lengthy period of time for hopefully a crisis that will resolve itself? And I'd say that's what they're hoping for, that it will resolve itself and then they won't have to go that road. But at the same time, if it doesn't, I don't think the measures they brought in are anywhere near sufficient. But I also think that if they start to take a view in a few weeks' time, see where this is going, and if it's not going anywhere and we still have these extraordinary high prices, maybe they should take some sort of action. But remember one thing, I don't know what freedom they have that's going to, make a proper difference to the price of oil products. Because at the end of the day, I understand and listened to your interviews this morning with various people who are protesting, and I understand where they're coming from. But I hate saying this, but this has its roots in a conflict and a price of oil worldwide. This hasn't been caused by the Irish government.
Talks from the people of the protest line this morning to me saying they should cap the price of green diesel, that they should reduce carbon tax. Are those feasible or legal?
I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask, obviously, our friends in Leinster House that question and to see how much would that cost. But you have to remember, homeowners are all paying for this too. We're all paying for it in our petrol prices. Price of home heating, oil's gone through the roof. So everybody's paying for this. It'll feed through to electricity prices. So I'm not being critical of our friends down the docks, but you're not the only ones that are suffering out there. You may be suffering a bit more than most in terms of your business. And I don't want to get into this debate, but I do not really agree with embargoing the flow of oil in the city. You're hurting the ordinary people. Yeah.
So government right to double down and not make any more concessions today?
I wouldn't say that. I would say they're right to pause and wait and see what happens on the international stage. It's a fluid situation. We don't know what's going to happen. We saw yesterday in 24 hours, so nobody knows what's going to happen. And I'd say they're taking a view that it's a wait and see. They're not making any long-term, in my opinion, looks to me from the outside, they're not making any long-term decisions one way or the other.
Now, in fairness to the protesters there today, they are only at the fuel depot in the docks, but they've stopped the rolling protests. Some other places are continuing with rolling protests, but that would have a knock-on effect on business here in the city yesterday. I know I was speaking to one lady who was meant to have her car serviced but had to just turn around an hour and more. So knock-on effect to businesses yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, we have a huge problem in retail in Galway. And at the end of the day, anything that starts to affect that and something like that, for anybody who has a shop in Galway, is disastrous. It doesn't take much to put off people coming into town, and so you're hurting the livelihood of other people. I don't know, whatever whatever you want to do, I don't think anybody should, when they're protesting over anything, should affect the livelihood of somebody else.
Okay. I want to move on now to look at some other situations. So the credit unions, they're to expand further into the mortgage market.
Yeah, what this has got to do with is that the government loosened, if you like, the purse strings for credit unions to be able to provide mortgages. And the central bank told them that you need a kind of a background structure in terms of being able to monitor your mortgages. And a number of credit unions have come together across the country to set up, administrative structure to, I suppose, answer the central bank's questions over their ability to be able to provide mortgages on an extensive basis. So that will basically allow the credit unions to provide much more mortgages for its customers.
Elsewhere, fraudsters are using rental ads for scams.
Yeah, I swear to God, sometimes with these fraudsters, if they would use their creativity for productive reasons, they might be better off. But anyway, so basically what they're doing is that this is another one where they're using online advertising for rental properties, and we all know the demand for rental properties in Ireland and from students coming up for the new term. And looking for maybe a deposit, or, like an application fee before you'd even go to look at the house, trying to get their hands in your bank details, say, well, you need to give us, a couple of €100 before we even show you the house. These are all scams. If anybody's looking for any money off you, and prior to you visiting and looking at the property in question, well, then you are being scammed, and basically just walk away.
There's new rules which will make it easier for older people to downside, Dave, but will it work out in practice?
Well, what's happened here is the government have approved a structure whereby when you go for a mortgage, as you probably know, John, there's a big emphasis put on your income, and your ability to repay the mortgage. So, but from the point of view of older people who are looking to downsize and provide them with bridging loans, which is something we haven't seen for years, they've said, look, in assessing an application for a bridging loan, they won't be looking at income criteria. It'll be based on what looks to be, devil is in the detail because it hasn't come in yet, but it looks as if it'll be based on the value of your house, if you have any borrowings on it, and the value of the house you're looking at, which obviously anybody who's downsizing, there's going to be a gap in funding, because generally you would see that when you're downsizing, your own house is worth a lot more than the house you're buying. So it'll allow people, I suppose, the mobility to move house if they want to do that. There are a lot of people in this country who, when they reach that stage of their life where they're asset rich and cash poor, and maybe downsizing and getting some equity out of the house might be an answer for them.
Now, is Black Friday a joke? 30% of online traders cheat.
Yeah, this is an EU survey. I think a lot of people have been questioning in recent years, whether the so-called offers I'm looking at on Black Friday are genuine or not. If you think Black Friday is an artificial creation, I think it was Amazon that was responsible for it. It just came out of nowhere, and I think a lot of traders, online traders in particular, have jumped on the bandwagon. But what they're doing is what this survey shows is that at least 30% of them are taking the view that they're cheating, because what they might be doing is increasing prices to bring them down again in the weeks ahead of Black Friday. So all they're basically saying is here, what you see is maybe not what you get in terms of perceived discounts on Black Friday.
Questioning, is investing in commodities a good idea?
There are a number of number of institutions who provide an avenue for you to invest in commodities. And what we're talking about here, commodities can be anything from gold, silver, oil, bananas, copper, anything you want to think. You can have a market in any sort of a commodity. It depends on what you're looking at and how you're looking at accessing it. There are ways of accessing the commodities market directly, but you're going to have a considerable amount of money and experience to be able to do that. It's certainly not for everybody. Most people would access commodities through a fund with a life assurance company. But you have to consider two things when you do that. One is the risk, and secondly, the ongoing costs associated with it. So it depends on the individual whether commodities is something you want to look at or not.
Another question. I made an investment in life assurance fund 8 years ago. It has fluctuated considerably in that time. Currently, it's only up 8%. Should I move into something else?
This is a fundamental question that people don't ask themselves if they have something for a long period of time, an investment for a long period of time. And, you know, having an investment, in my opinion, for 8 years, a specific one, is not a good idea, just simply from the point of view of time. And why do I say that? Because the investment world is changing constantly, and there are a load of new options available that wouldn't have been there 8 years ago, or maybe even 5-6 years ago. So yes, I would suggest it's probably time to move on to something else. Sticking with an investment indefinitely is a very bad idea, because you will see fluctuations up and down, and obviously this is something that's invested in a unit-linked fund, and an increase of 8% after 8 years is quite poor, and I think there's a message in that. Go on to something else.
Another question. I got a letter from a vulture fund who has my mortgage. I'm up to date on the interest-only loan that expires in 2030. The interest rate is attractive and is currently fixed, and they're asking me what I'm going to do about clearing it in 2030. This seems very odd to me. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, it's 6 years before you have to come back or to come into the vulture fund with proposals or be able to clear the loan at that stage. So it's on interest only, which means that obviously you're going to have a substantial capital repayment to make then, or else refinance it with somebody else. They can put pressure on you to make a decision or make changes now. They may be a bit devious in the sense that they might want to get you off the fixed rate that you're on, because it's much lower than the market rate. So they could be quite devious in that regard, and vulture funds are just like that. So I would say to that listener, don't allow yourself to be pressurised, but think about how you're going to deal with the capital repayment in 4 years' time at your own pace. You don't have to do anything until 2030. Then they will put pressure on you, whether sell the house, refinance it, or repay the mortgage. You have those options.
I have money on deposit in England since I live there. I'm wondering, should I bring it back to Ireland and reinvest it here?
Well, I think if you're, which you are, you're residing here, and this is your home, and you're probably tax registered in Ireland, it would make sense to bring back any funds that you have and invest them here. How you might be thinking about the exchange rate and a good time to transfer it or not transfer it. That's something that you'll hardly get right, because currency markets move all the time. But the answer is, I think you should move it back and invest it here.
Another question. I have a personal pension plan for many years, but the only time somebody ever seems to talk to me about it is when they're trying to get me to increase my contributions. Should they not be providing me with advice as to how my monies are invested? You're absolutely right, listener. They should be providing you with ongoing advice as to how your monies are invested, how they're performing, and give you, if you like, the service that you should be getting. Unfortunately, there are a lot of advisors and pension companies who only seem to kind of approach the individual with the personal pension plan at times when they're only trying to get you to increase the premium. And obviously that's also to their benefit. Now, I'm not saying that increasing the premium is a bad thing, and it may be absolutely suitable for you, but I would be critical of people in the industry who don't sit down with their customers and look at how the monies are invested, at least every couple of years. And yes, they should be giving you that type of advice. All right, another listener just texted in to say, what would you suggest I do with my deeds once I pay off my mortgage? Keep them at home. People sometimes say to me, will I leave my solicitor, will I leave them here, will I leave them there? And kind of they're a bit nervous about leaving them at home in case, inverted commas, something happens. So if something happens, it is a hassle you do not want. And what are you talking about? Something happening here, the whole place burns down. There's more of a chance, dare I say it, with all due respect to my legal friends, of a set of deeds maybe getting lost in the solicitor's office than there is having them at home. So my advice is just keep them at home and make sure that some family member, whoever it is, knows where they are if something happens to you. Can I ask you as well, Dave, did we get more clarity on the government savings scheme in the last few days? No. Or is it still no? And we won't until closer to the budget. So anything that you see in between is either hot air or speculation. Okay. And just the ZipPay app from some of the banks, is that working? Because I've heard mixed reviews of it on its functionality.
Well, I actually haven't heard anything negative about it. That's not to say, that there isn't. Lots of these things always have teething problems, John. So hopefully, that they're nothing too serious.
All right. Dave McCarthy of McCarthy Associates in Wookey, thanks for joining us on Galway Talks this morning. Coming back, teachers demand a halt to the assessment of need changes amid fears for children with additional needs. Brendan Horan, the